So this is my end of week 2 update for Amy and I. And this is probably since 2018. In 2018, we built our house, the house we're living in right now. And probably since then, this is the least I've hunted in the early part of the season since 2018. And the reason being is just because we're combining corn. We flew on some cover crops, and that just took a bunch of my time up. I'm really not all that bent about it because in the early part of the season, it's all a bed to feed pattern. And here at home, we typically struggle with that early bed to feed pattern because we only own 80 acres here, and 15 acres of it is really what's cover. So I do the best and I try to create that bed to feed pattern, but it's pretty tough because about a half a mile to our northwest is some really, really nice alfalfa. And I just have a hard time competing with lush alfalfa in the early season. So instead of spending a bunch of time and money and resources trying to fight and compete with that, we just kind of buy our time, shoot some does if we can, and wait till middle to the end of October before things heat up here at home. At our cabin farm, every year we have mature bucks on a bed to feed pattern. We bought that farm in 2012, and I set that up specifically for a bed to feed pattern. The deer are bedding in a bigger block of timber to the west, and they come out to the east to feed. And so that sets up really well for a bed to feed pattern, but we have hunters on that farm this year that are coming, I think, the end of October. So we've been doing combining, spreading cover crops. I talked about the alfalfa, not fighting it. Really what we look forward to is, you've heard this called the fall shift, or the bucks shifting from summer to fall range. And that's an entirely new, or another video really, where I could get into that. But primarily the shifting that I see, or what I believe the shift is caused by, is changing in habitat and changing in food sources. So a lot of that has to do by me when corn gets combined and when beans get combined, and more so corn, because there's so much really good habitat and all these fingers and draws in these cornfields really throughout the Midwest, that when that corn comes off, all those little fingers and draws and ditches are no longer really good places to bed. They feel secure in there when the corn is standing, but when the corn is off, they leave. And that's when my habitat really takes over. And we're starting to see that corn is going to start coming off here in the next couple weeks. We're starting to see some bucks on our cameras show back up. So hopefully the cabin farm had 2 or 3 mature bucks just in this last week show up on top of the 2 that were already there. A couple here at home, and we'll get into that in the video where I narrate. But that's really what we're looking at here, mid-October to third week of October here at home, is the shift based on the fall harvest. When I'm done narrating the video clips of what we saw this week, and we only got out a few times, I'm going to come back and I'm going to give you my thoughts on how much pressure can you put on your farm or your hunting property and keep it fresh for this year's season, so you don't burn it out, and really so you don't so you have the best chance. That's the best way I can explain it. So you have the best chance on attracting and holding bucks on your property, so you can grow them to the next age class. So at the end of the video, I'm going to circle back to that.
So earlier in the week, I started out with an observation sit. Amy was across the valley trying to get another doe. This is my standing corn. This corn's all gone now. But I just wanted to show this footage. See these ditches and draws going up in this corn? Deer will use these in standing corn. They'll use this cover, that grass. There might be some woody browse in there. But when the corn comes off, this is no longer ideal cover for deer. So I included this clip because I wanted to point that out. So after the fall harvest, that really, instead of the deer being so dispersed, they congregate a little better. There's a doe and a fawn. So this is long range glassing. Obviously these aren't like super high target deer or anything like that, but if this is a shooter buck, then you can start putting together a plan on how to take a deer like this. Here's just a doe. Again, pretty plain footage, but you can see it's using one of these draws. Once this corn comes off, these deer won't use these draws anymore, these little ditches and waterways. So that's why I did this footage and wanted to point that out. So this blind I'm overlooking, this is cut corn on the neighbors. That's who I farm with. So this is to the north of the blind. To the south of the blind is all my standing corn. Those cows in the background, that's my access to all these spots. So I come in through that cow pasture. So that's really perfect access. I love cow pastures for access. There's a fence opening right here. That little buck used that fence opening. There's a little mock scrape in front of you. Obviously, again, that's not a target animal. But in a week or two or a month from now, good chance a shooter buck will come right through that same fence opening when they're moving a little better. This is on a neighbor's property now. This is a permission farm. We don't do any habitat work. We don't do any food plots, nothing. I got a camera there on a mock scrape I made that night, actually. I put that mock scrape in on the way to this stand. So this is kind of just a trial run. It looks a lot thicker than it actually is in here because, you know, I'm up 20 feet and I'm looking through these green tops. But this is pretty wide open timber. I'm sitting in a cedar tree right now. But I saw one little buck, maybe two little bucks, and just a whole bunch of does and fawns that night. Maybe 6 or 7 does and fawns. And this is a farm that we're not going to highly manage or do anything special on. It's just a permission farm. And we're going to just try and see what shows up here. See if we can use this farm to take pressure off of, you know, the home farm and stuff like that. So you can see that little buck. He's looking at that camera. He's about 5 feet from that mock scrape. That's the only reason why I included this footage. That's an old Moultrie M80, I think. So there's a bunch of does came in, and they were nervous all night. And I think the reason why they were nervous is just because I probably left quite a bit of scent behind. Right, they're kind of right in that area of that mock scrape. But when I made it, I probably left quite a bit of scent behind. So again, trial run. There's another one coming. And we'll see what happens here in the next few weeks. So I'm sitting in that pond stand again. Last week I sat this pond in some timber. And I wanted to include this little bit of footage. I know it's pretty bad footage here. But it was windy enough. And my camera actually has auto wind reduction. So you can't really hear it on the camera. I figured out how to make that work too now. By the way, some of my past videos are pretty windy. But I was able to sneak into this stand with 2 bucks. This 2-year-old 8-pointer. And then another really small 1.5 years. And they were 50, 60 yards away. And I was able to sneak all the way to my stand, climb up in it, pull my bow up. And these bucks never heard me. Never spooked. So, just wanted to point that out. If you're going to go deep in your timber to some of your more intrusive spots, I like to do it on windy days. With the correct wind, of course, but on windy days, you can really get in. And the wind covers up a lot of your movement and any sound you would make. So this is my first, I believe this is the footage of my first sighting of a mature buck this year. Let's see if this is. Yeah, there he is. I think he's a 4-year-old buck. And he came by me at about 35 yards, like moments before this, and I just didn't have the camera I didn't have the camera ready to get it up and turn it on and hit record, and I didn't want to spook the deer. So, but you can see he's a pretty nice buck. He got a pass. It would have been a tough shot. He actually came in pretty quick. I would have had to grab my bow and stuff, but I really wasn't interested in killing him this early in the season. But he's a nice buck. Big body on him. It was hard to get good footage of him, so I apologize for that, because I had him at 35 yards when he first came through. It would have been perfect. But he's got decent mass, short G4s, but it's just good to see a mature buck on his feet. This is early, and there he jumps the fence. I'm hunting right along a fence. This old cow pasture fence is probably 50, 60 years old. You can see that water hole again. This might be the same buck from the other night. I never went back and looked at that footage from a week ago. It might actually be the same deer. But he came down and drank. I had a bunch of does and fawns do the same. And then he was eating those black oak acorns for quite a while too. This buck, yeah, I look at buck like this and yeah, he doesn't really get me excited, but he's going to be a giant someday. And then later that same mature buck, I got a little bit better footage of him. He actually circled around down to the southwest of me. I had a northwest wind in here, but yeah, he's a nice buck, but definitely not something I want to shoot this early in the season. Pretty thick in through here. The other thing I wanted to point out is these deer are eating acorns, and the other thing they're really browsing heavy on is coralberry. That's like my new favorite woody browse species is coralberry, and there's a bunch of it in here, and it stays green late into the fall. A lot of these deer when they're coming through and they're browsing, that's what they're eating is this coralberry. So here's those same couple little bucks. They're sparring. Those deer were by me pretty much all night to my southwest. Just another doe. I think there might have been a fawn behind her up the ditch. That's like a dam actually for the pond. A lot of these deer were coming into that water source. Even though it was cooler out and we had some misty rains, they were still hitting that water. Here's this that same 2-year-old buck that was on the water hole. He chased the fawn right by me. So the rut's in full swing, right? Like, first week of October. No, not really. But it's still fun to see him chasing like that. Here's that wide 2-year-old 8-pointer. It was to my southwest all night with that other little buck sparring. He came through. Offered a perfect shot. Nice to have Gummy or Pickett do that, right? But same thing. Climbs up that dam. A lot of these deer are hitting that same trail, coming up this dam and going to that water hole, which sets up perfect for a north wind. Now, if you're going to build, I think I said this in an earlier video, if you're going to build a water hole, you want to set it up for a south wind, because I think that's when they get the most action. But I didn't build this water hole. It was just here, and it really sets up the best for a north wind, so that's what I'm hunting it on. This is also another permission farm, and this is the farm where Amy shot muley last year. And everything I'm going to pan to right now, see all that open ground just to the south of that fence line you see there? That was all grass and cedars last year. And a local farmer bought this from a guy. I think he was from Pennsylvania or something. And he cleared all that grass and cedars out. He's probably going to start farming it. So I wanted to see how that affected the deer movement. I wanted to show this footage here, not because of the turkey, but you see that cattle fence? That cattle fence is in really good shape. So where this stand is located, right down on the left-hand side of the screen right now, there's actually a fence jump where the deer really hit that. The does crawl through it or go under it, and the bucks jump it. So that's why that stands in this location, to take advantage of that fence jump. But I think this was just last night. So again, we didn't do a lot of hunting this last week because of harvest. But we did get out a little bit. There's that fence again. These cattle fences work really good to funnel deer, but only if they're in good shape. If it's a cattle fence that's in bad shape, it's really not going to do a lot to funnel the deer towards you. So this next clip coming up is actually a big 8-pointer from last year. He was on the cabin farm. I was late muzzleloader hunting. Look at this big 8-pointer here. I think he was 4 years old last year, but heavy, massive, got really good brow tines. But he just came walking through this cornfield, and my daughter Lily has a late muzzleloader tag this year, so she'll be coming hunting with us, and she's talked about this buck several times. About it if it showed up again this year. He's got a little sticker on his right G2 there. Well, the exciting part is he just showed up. He just came back. I had no no doubt that he would, but he just showed back up again, and there he is. He's even bigger now. He grew like a 10th point on his right side. He's got still got that little sticker, still got that mass. Another 10-pointer showed up at the cabin farm. So these bucks will be there for those hunters, on top of a couple other mature bucks that are over there. But whatever's left, Lily will be able to hunt late muzzleloader. Here's another 10-pointer right behind the house. Amy has nicknamed him Worm. So there's a reason behind that, but that's Worm. And this is that same permission farm where I saw all those does in an earlier video, and this buck showed up. The quality is not that good, but it's a pretty good buck, so we'll see what happens on that farm. And then I'm not sure, but the day I saw that mature buck by the water hole, this is the next morning. This buck showed up about a quarter mile away, but on that same property. And it might be the same deer, but this deer actually looks like it has more mass, but we'll see. But that's daytime movement of another mature buck.
So I hope you enjoyed the video clips from this last week. Like I said, we didn't get out a lot, but I did see my first mature buck of the year. But I wanted to talk about how much you can hunt, or how much pressure you can put on your farm and keep it fresh and be able to attract and grow and hold bucks on your farm. And really, what I like to think about this, and what I tell people is, give yourself 5 to 7 days minimum between hunting each stand. So that means, really what that means is, the more land you have, the more acres you have, and the more tree stands you have that set up for the different wind directions, and the less you hunt, the more aggressive you can be when you're hunting. Conversely, the less land you have and the more you hunt, the less aggressive you can be. So what you see on a lot of like what YouTube stars and hunting stars is they own thousands of acres of land and 15, 20 different properties. So they can be very aggressive. They can hunt their food sources. They can hunt interior food plots. They can really do whatever they want, because that's probably the last time, or it can be the last time they ever hunt that stand for the season, because they have 40 or 50 more stands to go to. Normal hunters have an 80 or 120 acres, or maybe if you're fortunate you have 300 acres to hunt. But you really have to think of it in terms of 5 to 7 days between sitting a stand location. Now, some of my best stand locations where I have perfect access and I know I can hunt them and keep all the deer in front of me, and then I can get out in the evening without bumping deer, or I can get in the morning and later October and November and hunt and not bump deer on the way in, sit as long as I want to sit, and then get back out. Some of those best stands, I can hunt a couple days in a row. I can hunt with only 3 or 4 days off, and they stay fresh because they're perfect. But really rarely are stands perfect, or you have perfect entrance. They're perfect while you're sitting on a stand. Nothing ever gets downwind of you, and then you can get out at the end of your hunt. That's pretty tough to have perfect stands, and I only have a few of those. But the rest of my stands, I do everything I can to make them as best as I can, as far as entrance and exit, and keeping deer in front of me when I'm on stand. But I still like to try and use that 5 to 7 day time off rule. So I'm always hoping for weather fronts and the changes in winds. I want north winds and east winds and south winds and west winds. I want the winds to constantly be changing. Of course, that never happens in the real world. So I can constantly be bouncing around from my different tree stands and ground blinds, so I can keep my properties fresh. If I can't, if I get successive, let's say, south winds for 10 days in a row, then a lot of times I'll do observation sits, because I don't want to burn out. I don't have 10 or 11 south wind spots on the different properties I hunt. because I don't have thousands of acres of land to hunt. So I'll hunt them a couple times, and if I feel like, hey, I'm putting too much pressure, again, that 5 to 7 rule, then I'll do a couple observation sits. So I just wanted to kind of throw that out there for anybody who's thinking, how much can I hunt? Well, give yourself a 5 to 7 day, and there's actually some radio collar studies that show that deer will react to hunting pressure, let's say on a food plot or a scrape or something like that, and they'll avoid that area if they sense hunting pressure. Unless the hunting pressure goes away, it's about 5 to 7 days and they'll return to that area. So that's kind of what I go by. Give yourself a 5 to 7 day break in each hunting spot.